Hello everyone. I will share with you what I have learned from the rare Viking sources owned by my grandfather, a professor of history. I will tell these lessons in the form of stories. Enjoy listening. The kingdom was silent, covered under thick layers of snow. The fierce winter winds howled across the fjords, shaking the longhouses. The Viking King awoke at dawn, the cold air biting his face. Today, like every day, would test his strength and the resilience of his people. He put on his heavy furs and walked to the great hall, where the warmth of the fire awaited him. Warriors and counselors were already gathered, ready to discuss the day's challenges: hunting, guarding the village, and tending to the harsh winter supplies.
Winter's our true adversary,
The king murmured.
but together we endure.
Breakfast was simple: dried fish, flatbread, and warm mead. The king watched his warriors. Some sharpened swords, others inspected boats and sleds. Even in the cold, discipline and courage were demanded. Outside, snow-laden trees groaned under the frost. The king walked among his people. His presence lifted their spirits.
A leader must walk with his people even in the cold.
He thought. Hunting was vital. Food was scarce under the thick snow. The king and a small group of warriors entered the forest, following hidden tracks. Hours passed in silence. Only the snapping of ice under their boots was heard. Finally, they spotted a deer. With careful precision, they took it down. The meat would feed the village. Winter demanded skill, patience, and unity, for he knew the harsh winter was not only a fight for survival for the Vikings, but also the time when legends were born. The king drew in the cold morning air. The red winter dawn still draped the sky like a heavy curtain. For his people, this season was not just a struggle against hunger and cold, it was also a time to seek the signs of the gods. Every snowflake, every storm, carried a message from the divine. With heavy steps, the king left the longhouse and walked toward the village square. The ground was buried under a thick layer of snow, and the warrior's breath rose in clouds that cracked the icy air. The villagers gathered silently around him. Today, in the heart of winter, a prophecy ceremony was to be held. At the center of the square stood the Volva, the Viking seer draped in black furs. In her hands, she held ancient bones etched with runes. Her eyes shone with a wisdom that seemed to pierce the darkness beyond. She was a bridge between the gods and the world of men. The king approached in solemn silence. The villagers held their breath. Only the wind howled across the snow. The Volva placed the bones on the ground, letting them scatter into a strange, purposeful arrangement. Her voice rose like a cry that cut through the icy air.
Odin's eye watches over us. Thor's hammer will shatter the icebound mountains. Yet the northern winds carry the scent of blood. This winter will not be easy. Many fires will go out, but new victories will be born.
A shiver ran through the people. In Viking tradition, prophecy was the will of the gods. The king furrowed his brow and met the seer's gaze. The omen pointed to both danger and a glorious future. Then the king took a small pouch from his belt. Inside was a silver figurine, a sacred offering dedicated to Odin. He placed it before the Volva and spoke.
If the gods demand blood, blood shall be given. If they demand victory, victory shall be ours. My people and I will bow neither to the winter's cold nor to the enemy's sword.
His words echoed across the square. The warriors struck their shields to the ground, the sound booming through the snow like distant thunder. It was a silent vow to the gods, and so, on this harsh winter day, under the shadow of prophecy, a new day began. The king knew well. The signs he had seen today would shape the legends of tomorrow. After the Volva's prophecy, the village square fell into a deep silence. But this silence did not last long, for in the lands of the Vikings, every day, winter or summer, began with a trial of steel. The king walked toward his warriors. Shields lined in the snow gleamed like a wall defying the cold. Each man's breath rose into the icy air like smoke breaking through the frost. Calloused hands, fierce eyes, bodies hardened against the chill they had sworn allegiance to the king's name. With a single signal, the shields were lifted. Steel clashed against steel. The sound echoed across snow-covered mountains. The glint of the swords caught the red morning light, striking like lightning across the sky. Every clash was not merely training, it was preparation for battles yet to come. The king watched silently from his thick furs. Then he called the youngest warrior to his side. The boy, barely grown, still smooth-faced, gripped his sword with trembling hands. The king's voice thundered.
Iron must know you. A sword will not serve its master without tasting his blood. If you yield to the cold, you will yield to the enemy.
The boy gathered all his courage and swung his sword. When it met the heavier warrior's blade, the clash rang through the air, shaking every heart. A faint smile crossed the king's lips, for in the boy's eyes he saw the fire of the next generation. Then the shield wall was formed. Dozens of warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, raising their shields.
Skjaldborg,
they shouted. This was the Vikings' legendary shield wall tactic. Not even the fiercest snowstorm could break it, for these shields were more than wood and iron. They were the spirit of the Vikings themselves. The noise of clashing shields rolled like thunder. The king raised his hand to the sky and shouted,
"Let the gods witness. This cold can freeze our hands. Hunger can burn our stomachs, but nothing can break our spirit."
And the warriors struck their shields to the ground, sending the king's words soaring into the sky. In that moment, in the heart of the snow-covered north, the breath of iron and blood heralded the beginning of a new legend. After the echo of clashing shields faded into the mountains, a new movement stirred in the village square, for the king had another duty, even before the warriors' sweat had dried, to listen to his people. The Thing, the ancient assembly of the Vikings, was not only a place to make war decisions. There, every voice was heard, from the smallest dispute to the greatest matter. Even in the harshest winter days, this tradition was never abandoned. For the Vikings, justice had to be as sharp as a sword. In the center of the square, a circular area was carved from thick stones. Snow-covered ground turned to mud under the footsteps of the gathered people. Women, men, elders, even children crowded around. Fires burned, and the cold reddened everyone's faces. The king stepped onto a large stone. His wolf fur cloak rippled in the wind as his eyes swept over his people. First, silence fell. Then a man stepped forward. He was an old farmer, his face lined with cracks of age and hardship.
"My king,"
he said, his voice crackling like dry wood.
"this winter is merciless. Our fields are frozen. Our grains are running out. Will you protect our share?"
The king nodded and replied with a strong, clear voice.
Your field is my field. If your child is hungry, so is mine. We all carry the burden of winter together. Supplies from my stores will be brought to this village, for we are like the links of a chain. If one link breaks, the entire chain shatters.
Murmurs spread through the crowd, followed by voices of agreement. A merchant then stepped forward, speaking of goods that could not reach the harbor during the winter. Another told of a fight that had broken out in a neighboring village. Each person had the right to speak before the king. The king listened patiently. He offered solutions to every problem, weighed each complaint on the scale of justice. For to him, a kingdom was protected not only by sword, but by word and by fairness. At the end of the assembly, the king raised his sword high. Its silver gleamed in the firelight.
I am not your king. I am your shield. Whether the cold comes or the enemy comes, I will stand shoulder to shoulder with you. I swear this before the gods.
With these words, the thing concluded. The people struck their shields and staffs to the ground in approval. The sound rose to the sky like a drum breaking through the cold. And in that moment, everyone knew. The king's justice was as harsh as winter, but as fair as spring. The wind howled even fiercer now, carrying snowflakes like tiny daggers across the fjord. The king knew that winter did not spare even the bravest souls. Yet, duty called him to the sea, where ships awaited to carry warriors to distant lands or to patrol the coasts. The longship, carved from the heart of an ancient oak, gleamed with a coat of pitch. Its dragon-headed prow pierced the icy waves like a beast of legend. Warriors loaded supplies, salted meat, fish, barrels of water, and furs for warmth. Each movement was precise. There was no room for error in winter.
The sea respects only those who respect it.
The king reminded his men. As the ship left the harbor, the storm struck. Snow whipped across faces, and waves crashed over the sides, soaking everything in freezing water. The longship groaned under the weight of the storm. Yet the king's voice rang out, cutting through the roar of the wind.
Hold your oars, hold your hearts. The gods are watching, and we will not fail.
For hours, the warriors rowed through the fury of nature. Each strike of the oar was a battle against both the waves and the cold that threatened to numb their hands. The king, standing at the prow, eyes sharp and unwavering, guided the ship with instinct and courage born from years of winter voyages. At last, the storm began to relent. The horizon cleared, revealing jagged cliffs rising from the mist like silent guardians. The king lowered his gaze to his men. They were exhausted, faces red and lips blue, but their eyes shone with pride.
This is why we are Vikings,
the king said quietly.
Because even when the storm rages against us, we rise, we endure, and we conquer the day together.
The longship anchored in a small snow-covered bay. Firewood was gathered, and the warriors huddled around warm fires. Tales of past raids and battles were shared, laughter mixing with the crackle of the flames. Even in the heart of winter, the spirit of adventure and brotherhood burned brighter than any cold. The next morning, the village awoke to the sound of hammering. Sparks flew from the blacksmith's forge, dancing like tiny stars against the grey winter sky. Weapons had to be maintained, shields repaired, and armor reinforced. A Viking king knew that a sword could protect a village as much as a wall of stone. The king entered the forge, his breath steaming in the cold air. He observed the smiths at work, nodding at each precise strike.
A weapon is only as strong as the hands that wield it,
he said. Young warriors practiced nearby, their axes and swords slicing through straw dummies. Each movement had to be perfect. Mistakes in battle could mean death. The king walked among them, correcting stances, giving encouragement, and sharing his hard-won wisdom.
Strength is not only muscle,
he told them.
It is courage, focus, and knowing when to act. A true warrior fights with mind and heart, not only with arms.
The village women also played a vital role. They prepared meals, repaired clothing, and ensured the children were safe and warm. Even in the harshest winter, every person had a duty. As evening fell, the king stood atop a small hill overlooking the village. Smoke curled from chimneys, fires glowed warmly inside the longhouses, and the fjord reflected the fading light of the winter sun.
This is our kingdom,
the king thought.
forged in snow, shaped by fire, and protected by every hand, every heart here.
Even in the cold, the bond between the king and his people was unbreakable. For a Viking king, leadership was not about commanding alone. It was about standing together, enduring together, and thriving together. Night fell swiftly, blanketing the village in icy darkness. The wind had quieted, leaving only the occasional howl of a distant wolf. Inside the longhouses, fires crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls. It was time for the oldest tradition of the Vikings, the sharing of stories. The king gathered the children and elders in the main hall. Every face reflected the glow of the fire, eyes wide with anticipation. Stories were not merely entertainment. They were lessons, history, and inspiration, passed down from one generation to the next.
Listen well,
The king said.
for these tales are the shield of our culture and the sword of our wisdom.
He began with the story of a Viking who had sailed through a furious storm, much like the one they had endured recently. His voice was steady and commanding, painting vivid pictures of towering waves, howling winds, and fearless warriors. The children leaned forward, captivated, while the elders nodded in remembrance. Then came tales of ancient gods, of mighty battles, and of heroes whose courage had shaped the lands. Laughter and gasps filled the room as dragons, monsters, and fearless warriors came to life in the minds of the listeners.
Remember,
The king concluded,
our strength comes not only from our arms, but from our stories, our heritage, and our hearts. Never forget who you are, for these tales will guide you in the darkest of winters.
As the night deepened, the people returned to their homes, carrying warmth and courage in their hearts. Even as snow fell silently outside, the fire of tradition burned brighter than ever within the walls of the village. And so, under the endless stars of the northern sky, the Vikings slept, dreaming of adventure, valor, and the stories yet to be told. The dawn broke cold and sharp, casting pale light over the snow-covered village. Today was dedicated to training the preparation that would make warriors resilient, clever, and ready for any challenge. The king moved among the soldiers, observing their movements with a critical eye.
Strength alone will not win a battle.
He said.
Strategy, timing, and unity will.
The warriors practiced in the snow, axes slicing through air, shields raised in perfect formation, and arrows flying towards distant targets. The king demonstrated advanced maneuvers, teaching them how to use the terrain, anticipate the enemy, and protect one another in the chaos of combat. Meanwhile, scouts returned from the forests with reports of nearby threats, wolves, rival clans, and rumors of distant enemies planning raids. The king listened carefully, studying maps and listening to every detail. Every decision could mean life or death for his people.
A wise king fights not only with soldiers, but with knowledge.
He reminded his warriors. As the day progressed, the men grew weary, but the king's determination never faltered. He led drills, corrected mistakes, and inspired courage with every word and gesture. By evening, the soldiers were stronger, more disciplined, and more united than ever before.
A battle is not won by one man alone,
The king said.
but by every hand, every heart, and every mind working as one.
As night fell, the king looked out over the training grounds. Snow blanketed the land, but beneath the cold, a fire of readiness and resilience burned brightly. This was how Vikings survived, thrived and protected what was theirs, through skill, strategy, and unbreakable unity. With the morning light reflecting off the icy branches, the king prepared for the hunt. In the frozen forest, survival depended on skill, patience, and respect for nature. The villagers knew that the hunt was not merely a way to gather food, it was a test of courage and cunning, The king, dressed in furs and carrying a longbow, led a small group of hunters. They moved silently through the snow, listening to the whispers of the forest. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves could signal prey or danger.
Patience is the greatest weapon.
The king whispered.
Rashness will bring nothing but loss.
Hours passed as they tracked a herd of deer, following footprints and subtle signs left in the snow. The cold bit at their faces and their breath hung in the air like mist. Yet they moved as one, silent and focused, understanding the forest as if it were alive. Finally, the king drew his bow and released an arrow with precision, striking the lead deer. The hunt provided meat for the village, but it also reinforced the skills, discipline, and unity that were the true strength of a Viking people. As they returned to the village, the king reflected on the lessons of the hunt. Courage alone was not enough. Wisdom, respect, and cooperation were equally essential.
We survive not because we fight well,
He said.
but because we understand the land, the animals, and each other.
The villagers welcomed them back with warmth and gratitude, ready to share the spoils of the hunt and celebrate the resilience that had carried them through another harsh winter day. As the evening approached, the village longhouse glowed with warmth. Fires roared in the hearths. The king sat at the head of the hall, surrounded by warriors, elders, and children. Platters of roasted meat, fresh bread, and root vegetables were shared among them. But the food was only part of the celebration. Stories, songs, and laughter filled the hall, echoing against the wooden beams.
Tonight,
The king proclaimed.
we honor not only our strength, but our unity, courage, and wisdom.
Elders recounted the tales of past heroes, the victories of ancestors, and lessons learned from hard winters and fierce battles. The children listened intently, eyes wide with wonder, while the adults nodded in recognition and remembrance. Minstrels played haunting melodies on lyres and drums, filling the hall with rhythm that stirred both heart and spirit. Everyone sang together, their voices rising and falling like the waves of the northern seas.
A feast is more than food.
The king reminded them.
It is the celebration of life, the sharing of knowledge, and the binding of our hearts as one people.
As the night deepened, the villagers, warmed by food, fire, and camaraderie, felt the resilience of their community. Even outside, the harsh winter winds blew. But within the longhouse, hope, courage, and unity burned brighter than any storm. And so, under the star-studded northern sky, the Vikings rested, their hearts full of strength, their minds full of stories, and their spirits ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The long winter day had ended, and the village settled into a quiet stillness. Snowflakes drifted softly from the dark sky, covering the land in a pristine blanket. The king stepped outside, his breath visible in the cold night air, and gazed at the northern sky, where stars shimmered like distant fires.
A king is not only a leader of warriors,
He whispered to himself.
but a guardian of hearts, minds, and the legacy of his people.
He reflected on the day, the training that honed their skills, the hunt that tested their patience and courage, and the feast that united their spirits. Each challenge, each moment, had strengthened the bond between him and his people. The king thought of the hardships yet to come, the harsh winters, rival clans, and uncertain futures. But he also felt hope. The resilience, wisdom, and unity of his people were stronger than any storm.
We endure
He murmured.
because we stand together, because we respect the land, the lessons of our ancestors, and each other.
As the northern lights danced across the sky, painting the snow in green and purple hues, the king felt a quiet pride. He understood that true leadership was not measured by conquest alone, but by care, guidance, and the courage to protect what was precious. The village slept peacefully under the watchful stars, and the king returned to his hall. Though the night was cold and long, a fire burned within one of hope, unity, and enduring strength. And so the Viking king prepared for the days to come, confident that with wisdom, courage, and the loyalty of his people, no storm nor any challenge could ever break them. Thank you for listening. If you leave a comment and like the video, I will continue to create more videos like this.